Welcome to a special edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host, Joe Cullen. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Northeast Journal and the Government Television Network. We'll take a trip down memory lane with a look at some of our favorite memories from the last 20 years. All that and more is straight ahead on this special edition of Northeast Journal. Hello everyone and welcome to this special 20th anniversary edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host, Joe Cullen. Every month on Northeast Journal, we give you an inside look at the people and places that make up the Northeast section of the Twin Cities. 1994 was a memorable year. The Olympic Games in Norway featured the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding showdown. O.J. Simpson fled from police in a white Bronco. There was no World Series due to a strike. Forrest Gump was the top-grossing movie of the year. And it was also the year that the Government Television Network debuted. One of the first shows on our channel was Northeast Journal. Now, I wasn't the first host. I was only graduating high school and beginning college that year. For a little primer on Northeast Journal's history, here's a look back at a segment we did to celebrate our 10th anniversary in 2004. A new television program designed to inform Northeast suburb residents of their City Hall happenings, local events, and interesting people was unveiled to the viewing public in February of 1994 in the form of Northeast Journal.
Welcome to the very first edition of Northeast Journal. From the North St. Paul Community Center, I'm Heather Filkins. This is a show dedicated to keeping you informed about what's going on in your local government.
And now in 2004, Northeast Journal is still going strong, bringing residents the news they need about their communities every month. Well, the set that I'm walking on here is for the Century College production of The Rover. And while we're on the topic of authors, let's find out what the Ramsey County Library is recommending as their book of the month. We'd like to thank Bob and Pam Hampel for letting us hang out in their backyard for a while. The Pine Tree Apple Orchard, where we're bringing you this month's show, is known throughout the metro area for their... The Vadnais Heights Economic Development Corporation is known throughout the community for its good deeds.
We're going to have the expansion of a mall.
Ramsey County District Court Judge Gary Bastian is a former mayor of Maplewood and used to be a Ramsey, Washington suburban cable commissioner. He remembers the motivation for starting a show like Northeast Journal.
Well, we found as local communities that we didn't have a real good presence in the printed media. So we felt it was important that our communities, our voters, taxpayers, had a more positive viewpoint of what our communities were doing. Rather than always bad news, we would see some of the good news. Be proactive rather than always reactive.
So every time, that I'm involved in various activities or...
Oakdale City Administrator Craig Waldron was among those featured on the very first Northeast Journal and was an early champion of community programming.
So I think by the station highlighting, all the stuff that's going on in these communities, it's great. People, if they want to find out what's going on in their communities and kind of get a visual depiction of it, it gets the word out. It's wonderful.
We're approaching the Y2K issue.
White Bear Lake City Manager Mark Sather has also long recognized the value of a show like Northeast Journal.
Things like the Northeast Journal, I think, help, particularly when we're looking at topics specifically related to our community. And to some extent, our community, I think, for most White Bear Lake residents, certainly transcends the municipal boundaries of the city of White Bear Lake, but it's the White Bear area. And they're very proud of being part of it, and most of the people that we deal with here at City Hall are very interested in knowing what's going on, from hard news to just more general interest topics.
So we feel that that's a plus.
Other city officials enjoy watching Northeast Journal to learn about their counterparts in other cities.
Well, I think, I do catch the show, Northeast Journal, and it keeps me updated on what's happening in the communities around North St. Paul, even though you cover a lot of things happening in North St. Paul. For instance, I found it very interesting, your interview with the new mayor of Mahtomedi, who we don't get to meet other than seeing him on television. So I thought that was nice for myself as a mayor to be able to see his interview.
We're always looking for ways that we can improve our service without... Well, I think the Northeast Journal really helps the community by providing information to our residents in a form that we're all used to. It's called TV. Our council has recognized it, and we now broadcast all of our council commission meetings because of the impact that television has on our residents.
That whole discussion needs my involvement. Well, I think they're important because it allows the cities and the counties and the organizations within the community the opportunity to share with the public what's going on. People are very busy today, and being able to go onto the cable channels and find out what's going on in your community, to see your neighbors and your friends, to find out what projects are going on, it's just a great, convenient way to do it.
Over the past 10 years, Northeast Journal has had a variety of hosts bringing you a mix of stories and interviews. Here's a look at some highlights from our first 10 years.
It's the Washington County Mounted Patrol to the rescue. Most of them aren't riding white horses, and they're certainly not wearing any shining armor. But the intent remains the same.
To the redwood forest, this land was made for you and me.
And according to Gemma Berry, this land and this street in Willerny were meant to be kept clean. And the twist was the dance of the day. And back at the Heritage Days Festival, nearly 7,000 gallons of steaming booyah made stomachs grumble and mouths water for the once-a-year treat.
It is an open forum, so any and all questions are welcome today.
The kickoff question came from a Lake Elmo small business owner. He's concerned about health care for his family and employees.
Are you still advocating a single payer program?
Oh, I think the more I look at the different reforms, the more I think single payer is the, if you will, the gold plate standard.
Welcome back to Northeast Journal. Choosing a new name can be difficult, especially for two schools merging. Lakewood Community College in White Bear Lake and Northeast Metro Technical College in Mahtomedi have joined together. But with the merger, the school needed a new name. A contest was held on both campuses. Students, teachers, and residents submitted 700 new name ideas. A task force then trimmed the list to 6. Twin Rivers College, Century College, Northeastern College, St. Croix College, Century Hills College, and Eastwood College.
The access to White Bear Lake is within a block of the Flame headquarters, so it's just very accessible. It's only a 3-hour tournament, so we're on the lake usually within 15 to 20 minutes of starting time.
Okay, 6 o'clock, league's officially started.
What we do is we have a general idea of how the lake layout is. We use contour maps. We have a general area we look for. We drill holes and we find certain contours in the lake bottom to set up, where the fish like to feed.
There's a new face in the mayor's seat at the Vatanis Heights City Hall. There's been a changing of the guard, and Sue Banovitz is now the city's new mayor. And she has big plans to help move Vatanis Heights into the 21st century. And this month's Spotlight, we find out Banovitz's vision for the future and what it's like to be the city's first female mayor.
I wanted to be mayor because I had served for almost 6 years on the city council. I had learned a lot. I had a good grasp of the issues. And I felt there needed to be a change.
Just sort it. Just sort it. Recycling's cool and you don't need no school. You'd have to be a fool not to learn these easy rules. Just sort it.
It's a project for the city of White Bear Lake to make people more aware of household hazardous waste and how to dispose of it. They wanted something that was catchy and would appeal to all ages, and they wanted to involve retirees in the project. So here's a look at what we came up with.
Just another day at the Anderson household. Why, there's Mrs. Anderson now. Looks like she's about to do a little cleaning. Say, that looks like household hazardous waste. What are you doing, Mrs. Anderson? Stop! Don't dump it down!
If you're young,
or if you're old,
sometimes you gotta do as you are told. We're here to talk about hazardous waste, something you should not dispose of in haste.
We're talking aerosols, paints, and pesticides,
motor oil,
gasoline,
and cleaning supplies.
Good evening. Welcome to Fright Farm. We're going to have a very, very scary time.
The top inside will be about 220 degrees when we take off. And it's the temperature differential from in there to the outside temperature that creates the lift. We go anywhere from just over the treetops to about 1,000 to 2,000 feet generally. Depending on what kind of wind we have up above, it's pilot discretion. So, kind of do a little low flying, a little higher flying, a little bit of everything.
Well, for 13 years, Marianne Franson has done more than just put on a pretty face. Through her dedication and devotion to children and communities across the Northeast Metro, it's easy to see why this lovable, huggable granny touches lives everywhere she goes.
My clown name, which I go by quite often, is Granny Hug-a-Bug. Oh, there we are. Can I have a hug? Oh.
Wow, our state capitol sure is big. And to think, this is where our state laws are made.
You mean to tell me you know how state laws are made?
Well, I know that the first step starts out as an idea from people just like you and me.
Here lies the remains of Ramsey County's poorest residents from 1894 to 1923, all 2,991 of them to be exact. Peter Boulay, president of the Maplewood Area Historical Society, shares more.
In the old days, they called it the poor farm. Old days, I mean, when they moved it here in 1885, and even by the 1920s, they started wanting to get away from that stigma of being called the poor farm, because nobody wanted to, say they're going to the poor farm.
It's time. Bam! Here it comes. Bam! Bam! For the past year, scores of Twin Cities residents have been enjoying the sounds of a restored historic organ at St. Andrew's Church in Mahtomedi. We had the opportunity to get a close-up look at this one-of-a-kind instrument.
But this organ was given by a man in memory of his late wife, and in 1927 it was installed in what has become a concert hall.
There's always something exciting and fresh happening in the Northeast suburbs, and you can count on Northeast Journal to keep you informed and entertained for many years to come. So those were the first 10 years of Northeast Journal. We've certainly kept busy these past 10 years too. We've done countless stories and interviews over the last decade. One show that has a deep personal connection for me was one we did back in 2009 called Surprised by Autism. It was a special edition of Northeast Journal that focused on my family's journey with my son's autism. Here's a look back at some highlights from that program. October 4th, 2005. That's when Josiah Sean Cullen entered our world. My wife Tani and I were so excited to greet this little bundle of joy, and for the first year and a half our lives seemed pretty typical. Milestones were being met, and with each passing day we saw Josiah doing all the things parents anticipate. But with very little notice, something drastic happened.
I would say that maybe somewhere between 19 months and 22 months, there were little things that started to change, but it was really at 22 months, he started losing some words. He started just acting differently, and then it just kind of took a nosedive from there.
Josiah, high five!
He stopped looking at us, responding to us. He stopped responding to his name. I remember having to take a blanket and put it over his head and mine to get him to look at me. And there was a moment during that 3 weeks that I just remember saying, oh my gosh, I think we're losing him. I remember during that time doing a lot of internet searching, and I would put in kind of the symptoms, and it would kind of be like hoping that anything would come up but autism. And I swear every time I'd put in some of these symptoms that we were seeing, autism kept coming up. The sort of thing that was so scary about that was a lot of the things that would come up would say autism is incurable, it's lifelong, and it's pervasive. And that was really, really scary for me. That seemed like there was absolutely no hope. They didn't know what caused it or how to fix it. And I was hoping it could be a speech delay, it could be his eyes, maybe it was his eyes that were not working well, something, anything but that. So it was kind of scary when that word kept coming up.
It's not uncommon for families to go through cycles of grief when faced with an autism diagnosis.
Lots of fear about what is this going to mean. You know, autism is one of those disorders that is so varied among children. The way it looks in every different child is a little bit different, and the severity of how affected a child is or isn't can be so different. And so parents are really overwhelmed in the beginning, really fearful, not understanding what this means, what's it going to look like in the future. If this is what my child looks like today, is this what my child will always look like? And there's so much unknown in the beginning that it can be really overwhelming for parents.
Row, row, row your boat. For my situation, I felt like I was kind of blindsided by autism. It was like one day everything was normal and great, and the next day something was wrong.
We were fortunate enough to receive some awards for Surprised by Autism, including one from the Alliance for Community Media and a nomination for a Midwest Regional Emmy. It's truly been an honor to produce and host Northeast Journal for as long as I have. Here's a look back at more of our favorite segments.
This building has sort of a personality as far as I'm concerned. We live just 4 blocks away, and I think of this as another one of the older residents in the community, certainly the oldest, and it has a personality. I think of it as feminine. I don't know why, but I just think that she's an old, respected resident in the community, and I enjoy being a part of it.
Sometimes I'll be standing in the front door area, and I'll look out, and I'll try to myself try and imagine what this place looked like maybe in 1870. It's a nice old building. It shows its age in some spots, but for the most part, we've been lucky to maintain it.
Ice, best known for his early 90s smash hit Ice Ice Baby, was in Maplewood recently to perform a concert at the Rock nightclub. After he rocketed to success with his first album, Ice was quickly called a novelty act thanks to shaky career decisions, including dolls and movies.
Oh yeah, Cat. Words of wisdom. Drop that zero and get with the hero.
Musically, it was all true. I had control of my music, but when I took millions of dollars to change my image to cater to younger people, broader audiences, I didn't know the outcome from it. So I threw myself into this mousetrap, kind of full of cheese. But I got millions of dollars from it, so anybody probably would have done it, in my shoes.
Before he hit it big, Ice had the respect of an underground rap crowd. But that all changed once Ice Ice Baby hit it big.
Basically, the thing took on a life of its own. There was no way I could stop it. It was so huge. We were selling 1 million records a week at a certain point, Still to this day, in the Guinness World Record book, everything, it's the most sold rap record in history. And it'll probably never be matched or done again. I never expected it. I never predicted it. It just happened, man.
There was a little something for everyone during the Governor's Fishing Opener in White Bear Lake. Area kids weren't left out of the act as they took part in the Minocqua event put on by the DNR. The Minocqua program is the aquatic education and fishing program for the DNR.
Well, we supply tools to people that want to introduce kids to fishing, but also to lead them sort of down a path towards greater understanding of the environment and ultimately stewardship of our natural resources.
Second graders from Lake Ayres Elementary in White Bear Lake have been studying the Minocqua curriculum this year.
We have been working on different types of fish that there are, the different families that they are in, and also the different land preserves that we have working with. So we've been doing lots of lessons that the DNR have come, so we're all ready for fishing, and when we catch the big fish, what kind we have.
Here's what a couple of the students learned from the Minocqua program.
We learned about insects and butterflies and stuff, so it's really fun. The walleye is our state fish, and how it's got his name because his eyes very gentle, so he goes on the bottom of the wall. It's kind of like the bottom is kind of like a wall of the bottom, so it's like a walleye.
The students impressed the DNR officials with their knowledge.
So these students came prepared ahead of time with a lot of knowledge already, and this was just sort of a great way to elevate that more by seeing some real fish, some live things, some management techniques that we use. They saw the tagging of the muskie, which is something they learned about in class, but it's always fun to see it live.
The students took part in many activities during the event, including casting and a shoreline restoration project. Half of the project was done last fall, and the other half was completed with the kids during the fishing opener.
We want to leave the shoreline natural, so you can utilize the park here and have people come here and enjoy that. They can get out and fish on the pier, but yet you're leaving some of the shoreline natural for fish and wildlife and for the water. So it's a long-term idea to help keep this lake, nice and healthy with clean water, but also have a lot more wildlife and fish around.
Governor Pawlenty even stopped by the event to tag a muskie, ask the kids some questions, and even fish with a few of them.
I think they're great, and you can just see when a few of them caught fish, their eyes light up, their faces light up, and just brings back a lot of great memories, but also as the start of a new, maybe a sport or a fun pastime for them. That's what we want to promote.
Governor Pawlenty is a big fan of the Minocqua program.
Minnesota's fortunate because unlike some other states, we're not seeing the decline in fishing as you see in some other states, but if we don't pass it on to the next generation, then it will be a lost sport, a lost art, and a lost pastime, and we don't want that to happen because it's important to our state, and we want people to enjoy the outdoors here.
A passion for gardening and a passion for railroading come together beautifully at the Bifolk residence. Frank and Dee Dee Bifolk of White Bear Lake operate the Big Sandy and Cumberland Garden Railway. It combines Dee Dee's love of gardening with Frank's knowledge of railroads. After many years of gardening, Dee Dee decided something was missing from their yard.
I got it in my head that I wanted to do something small out here, actually. And I'm thinking like a 20-foot oval track. I didn't know. Frank's the train guy, so I kind of presented it to him, and he kind of took off with it, and before I could stop him from running away with it, it was done.
Frank is a retired locomotive engineer, and he spent a couple of years building the track before feeling a rush to finish it.
I think what prompted us to finally get a train out is a lot of the ladies were finally getting their husbands to go on a walk with the promise that they would see the train. And then they weren't, and they were getting angry, so we I said, you know, we're here to see the train, where you going to have your darn train, you know. So we got my boys to help, and we put everything in and got everything operating finally.
The train has now been running for over 6 years. It took quite a bit of time for Frank to figure out the perfect layout for his creation.
They had no plan. I had to do the way the real railroaders did it, and that was figure out how to go around, under, through, or over. And I spent a lot of time in the driveway just looking in her garden, trying to figure out where I could go, where I wouldn't, you know, have to move a lot of plants. And then I just bought some sections of track and eyeballed it, and I marked it all off when I could figure I could go through this bush, this tree, around this plant, and then I picked the track up after I marked it out and laid it down again. And I basically walked it all the way around with just a few pieces, and that gave me an idea what I was going to need.
So I put the lights on there.
A police car outside the White Bear Lake Library didn't mean there was an emergency, just a special guest on hand for children's story time.
The rear-wheel drive ones are a little hard to drive in the wintertime.
We have the police coming, so we try and get community members to come in and talk to the kids about different things that I can't provide in story time. We try and do that quarterly to connect with the community, and it's a lot of fun, especially for something like the police, where they can bring a squad car. The kids and the parents really love that.
Officer Nate Hook from the White Bear Lake Police Department was on hand to read to the kids. After a few books and songs from the children's librarian, it was Officer Hook's turn to do some reading.
This is my neighborhood. The police station is in my neighborhood.
Officer Hook, who is originally from New Zealand, used to be a high school teacher before becoming a cop in the United States. Reading to preschool kids was a new assignment for him, though.
It was probably one of the scarier things I've done. Even as a high school teacher, you know, the bigger kids are different, so the little ones are like, whoa. Yeah, so it was a different challenge, but yeah.
So that in a nutshell has been what 20 years of Northeast Journal has looked like. We're not the only ones celebrating an anniversary this year. Suburban Community Channels, which is our sister public access station, is celebrating 30 years in 2014. A number of events are being held this fall to commemorate our anniversaries. You can find those listed on our website at gtn.org. And I want to thank all of you for faithfully watching Northeast Journal all these years on Channel 16. We have a great staff here that puts together this show. There are too many names over the years to mention, but photographer-editor Jeff Melcock has been working on the show since 1999 and does a great job. Our supervisor, Judy Skye Voss, is a great supporter of our show, and we're very thankful for her. So here's to another 20 years for Northeast Journal and the Government Television Network. Thanks for watching, and join us again next month.